Congratulations, your position has been eliminated. The words sliced through the boardroom like glass. The new CEO, Peter Mercer, leaned back in his chair, lips curled into a smug grin. Around him, the board members chuckled, some openly, others behind polite smirks. It wasn't humor. It was mockery. Me, Laura, head of corporate partnerships for 7 years, the one who had carried this company through 2 acquisitions, 3 near bankruptcies, and countless sleepless nights. They weren't just letting me go. They were enjoying it. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Instead, I let the silence drag, long enough that even the laughter wavered. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a thin cream-colored envelope, and slid it slowly across the polished mahogany table toward Peter. "You might want to check page 1, I said softly, my voice calm but deliberate. "Where your investors learn I own 70% of this deal." The room froze. The chuckles died mid-breath. Peter's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" He scoffed, but there was a tremor beneath the bravado. I smiled. Not the kind of smile that invites warmth, the kind that never touches the eyes. "You heard me," I whispered. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the hum of the overhead lights and the faint shuffle of papers as one of the directors reached for the envelope with hesitant fingers. Peter snatched it before anyone else could, his hand tight, almost clawing at the paper as though the truth might bite him. He opened it. He scanned the first page. And then, there it was. The color drained from his face. His neck stiffened. His jaw locked. Hook number 1. I leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, watching as the realization sank in. He had walked into this meeting thinking he was the executioner. He didn't know he was the condemned. But let me back up for a second. This didn't start today. It started 2 years ago, when the company, Stratus Global Logistics, was a sinking ship bleeding clients and revenue. The old CEO, Whitaker, was desperate. Banks wouldn't lend. Investors had turned their backs. Employees whispered about updating their resumes. That's when I made my move. I brought in Horizon Ventures, a private equity group I had deep ties with from my early career. I brokered the deal that kept Stratus alive. I negotiated terms, secured bridge funding, and made sure every contract went through me. But there was one clause, buried deep in the paperwork, that no one but me seemed to care about. Horizon wasn't investing in Stratus alone. They were investing in me. For every dollar they put in, my name was on the partnership agreement. 70% of the intellectual property rights, 70% of the data pipelines, and most importantly, 70% of PulseTrack. The logistics software that had just transformed Stratus from dying relic to industry leader. I didn't brag about it. I didn't need to. I simply worked. Quietly, efficiently. While the others congratulated themselves on surviving another quarter. Until Whitaker retired last month and the board hired Peter. He was slick, the kind of executive who dressed sharp and spoke sharper, all polish and no substance. He strutted in on his first day like he owned the building. Within a week, he reorganized entire departments, slashed budgets, and paraded interns into meetings just to humiliate veteran staff. And today? Today was supposed to be my turn under his knife. "Effective immediately," Peter repeated, trying to summon his confidence back. "We're restructuring." "It's not personal, Laura. It's just business." Business. Always business. The irony made me want to laugh. I had anticipated this moment. For months, I had watched my access shrink, my name slowly erased from presentations, conversations halting whenever I entered the room. I wasn't naive. This was the classic playbook. Bring in a new face, discard the old one, and claim the wins as your own. But Peter hadn't done his homework. He didn't know I was the deal. That's why I wasn't panicking. That's why, as he sat there now, his hands shaking slightly over the document he had just read, I stayed perfectly calm. Hook number 2. Laura? One of the older board members, Mr. Hayes, cleared his throat. His voice was low, careful, as though he'd just realized he was sitting on a powder keg. Is this accurate? I tilted my head, feigning mild amusement. Every word. Peter slammed the papers shut, but his pale face betrayed him. He wanted control. He needed control. But control had just shifted. 70%, I said softly, repeating the number like it was a knife. That's the share I hold in PulseTrack. The only product keeping your investors smiling, your clients loyal, and your stock alive. Without it, Stratus Global is worth what, gentlemen? A rounding error? The room buzzed, whispers darting like electricity. I stood, slowly, deliberately, collecting my badge from the table. You thought I was the employee you could discard, I said, letting the words hang heavy in the air. But in about 5 minutes, when your investors call you back, you'll realize something else. I leaned forward, eyes locked on Peter's. I'm not your employee. I'm your majority owner. Hook number 3. And with that, I turned, heels clicking against the marble floor, and walked out of the boardroom. Behind me, I heard Peter's voice crack for the first time. What have you done? I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because he was about to find out. The sound of my heels against the marble echoed down the hallway, sharper and louder than I remembered. Maybe it was just the silence that followed me. The stunned silence of a boardroom realizing their world had shifted in a matter of minutes. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. When I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. And again. By the time I stepped inside the elevator, I had 6 missed calls, 3 from blocked numbers and 1 from Rachel, the operations director. I smiled faintly. Right on schedule. The doors slid shut. I exhaled slowly, letting the adrenaline ease through me. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I had been preparing for this moment for months. But still, knowing something and living it are 2 different things. As the elevator descended, I couldn't help but think back. 2 years ago, when Stratus Global had been 1 breath away from collapse, I was the one who pulled them back. I remember the night vividly. Whitaker pacing in his office, shirt untucked, muttering about payroll and debt collectors. He looked at me like a drowning man looks at the last piece of driftwood. We don't make it another quarter, Laura. He whispered, not unless we pull a miracle. That's when I made the call. Horizon Ventures. The partners still owed me favors. They didn't trust Whitaker, but they trusted me. They knew my work, my record, my ability to deliver. So I pitched it not as saving Stratus Global, but as investing in PulseTrack, the software I had built, nurtured, and refined for years. That night, while everyone else went home defeated, I sat at the conference table until dawn, hammering out terms. And hidden in those terms, clear as day, but invisible to those who never bothered to read, was the protection clause. 70% ownership of PulseTrack tied directly to me. I didn't do it out of malice. I did it because I'd been in the game long enough to know how quickly loyalty dries up when money's on the table. And today proved me right. The elevator doors opened to the ground floor lobby. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Employees who had heard whispers but not details stared openly as I walked past. I wasn't carrying a cardboard box of belongings. I wasn't crying into my hands. I was walking calmly, deliberately, the same way I had walked into countless negotiations. Except this time, I wasn't the one being negotiated. My phone buzzed again. I finally answered. Laura. Rachel's voice was tight, urgent. What the hell just happened? Peter's screaming, the board's in chaos. Investors are calling every 5 seconds. I cut her off gently. Breathe, Rachel. You blindsided them, she hissed. You can't just... Rachel, I said, lowering my voice. You've worked with me long enough to know I never walk into a meeting unprepared. They wanted me gone. They thought they could erase me. I reminded them who really holds the keys. There was silence on the line, then a sharp inhale. You actually did it. You tied ownership to yourself. I did, I confirmed. And Peter just discovered it the hard way. Another silence, longer this time. Then Rachel said, almost whispering, Laura, do you know what this means? Yes, I replied. It means the game has changed. By the time I reached my car, the first email had landed in my inbox. Subject line, URGENT, conference call requested. From Horizon Ventures. I opened it. Investors were demanding an immediate explanation from Peter about PulseTrack's ownership. A meeting was scheduled in 2 hours. I leaned against my car, scanning the email. A small satisfaction curling in my chest. For once, I wasn't the pawn being shuffled around the board. I was the board itself. But power, I've learned, doesn't come without cost. That evening, as I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Rachel, or Horizon, or some panicked board member. It was my brother. Laura, he said cautiously, I just saw something online. Your company, your CEO, it's all over the finance blogs. Already? I muttered. News travels fast. You okay? He asked. I hesitated. Was I okay? The truth was, I felt strangely calm. But beneath that calm was something else, the sharp edge of reality. This wasn't over. Peter wouldn't go down quietly. Men like him never did. I'm fine, I told my brother. Better than fine. But even as I said it, I knew the storm hadn't peaked yet. Because Peter Mercer wasn't the type to lick his wounds. He was the type to strike back. And if I'd learned anything in business, it was this. The moment you reveal you're holding the cards, someone will try to flip the table. That night, just as I was shutting down my laptop, an email appeared. No sender, no subject. Just one line in the body. 70% won't protect you forever. I stared at it, my stomach tightening. The battle in the boardroom was only the beginning. The email sat on my screen like a shadow I couldn't shake. 70% won't protect you forever. No sender, no trace. Just a sentence sharp enough to feel like a blade pressed against my skin. I closed the laptop slowly, deliberately, as if shutting the lid would mute the unease creeping through my veins. But I knew better. Messages like that didn't come from nowhere. Peter had made his first move. The next morning, I walked into Horizon Ventures' conference room for the emergency investor call. The faces on the screen were a mix of irritation and curiosity. Some of them had backed me for years. Others didn't know me at all, only numbers on a spreadsheet. Peter was already there, pale but posturing. He wore a crisp navy suit, tie knotted too tightly, eyes darting like he was trying to control a room that had already slipped from his grip. Let's be clear, he began, his voice sharp. This company cannot operate with fractured ownership. PulseTrack must belong entirely to Stratus Global, not tied to one individual. It's reckless. It jeopardizes investor confidence. I let him talk. It's what men like him do best. When he finally stopped for breath, one of the senior partners leaned forward. Laura, is it true? You hold 70% of the PulseTrack rights? Yes, I said calmly. And I secured those rights to protect investors from precisely what you're seeing now, mismanagement and short-term greed. Murmurs rippled through the call. Peter's jaw tightened. This isn't protection, he snapped. It's a hostage situation. She's holding the entire company ransom. Hostages don't build the system that saved you, I replied evenly. I didn't create PulseTrack to line my pockets. I created it to keep this company alive. And the clause you call reckless? It's the only reason Stratus Global isn't bankrupt today. Silence. Heavy, waited. The kind of silence where decisions take shape. One of the partners finally spoke. "Peter, you knew about this clause?" He hesitated. "Too long. It was buried. Oversight." That was all it took. I watched the partners exchange looks, eyebrows raised, lips pursed. Oversight. The deadliest word in finance. The call ended with no resolution, but I'd won the round. Still, I knew Peter. He wouldn't lick his wounds and regroup quietly. He'd escalate. And he did. Faster than I expected. By mid-afternoon, HR called me. Not the usual polite tone, but clipped, rehearsed, nervous. "Laura, we've been asked to collect your company laptop and phone immediately. Standard procedure during disputes." I almost laughed. Disputes? Is that what we're calling this? The HR rep faltered. I don't make the rules." "Of course you don't," I said, my voice firm. "Tell Peter he can have my laptop when he pries it from Horizon's legal team." Click. I hung up. 2 hours later, I received another call. This time, Rachel. Her voice was tight, panicked. "Laura, you need to know, Peter's spinning this. He's telling employees you manipulated the contracts, that you're planning to sell PulseTrack privately. He's poisoning the water." "Of course he is," I muttered. "That's what cornered men do." "But people believe him," Rachel insisted. "They're scared. Some think the company could implode if this fight goes public." I rubbed my temples. This was exactly his play. Turn me from savior to villain, shift the narrative until people forgot the truth. "I don't care about rumors," I said. "Facts win, contracts win. He can scream all he wants, but the paper doesn't lie." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "Still, be careful. He's not just fighting for control. He's fighting for survival. Men like that don't stop at words." Her warning lingered long after I hung up. That night, I drove past Stratus Global's headquarters. Lights blazed on the executive floor. I knew who was still inside. Peter, probably pacing, shouting, making promises he couldn't keep. I parked for a moment across the street, staring up at the building where I'd poured years of my life. It didn't look like a place of innovation or growth anymore. It looked like a battlefield. And I wasn't naive. Battles like this rarely ended with just words. When I got home, another envelope was waiting. Slipped under my door. No postage, no return address. Just my name scrawled across the front. Inside, a single sheet of paper, printed in bold letters. "PulseTrack belongs to Stratus. You can't fight us all." I sat down heavily on the couch, paper in hand. It wasn't a threat from Peter alone. It was bigger, coordinated. The board, maybe even outside players, circling like vultures. For the first time, the weight of what I'd done pressed against me. Not fear, exactly, but the realization that I had crossed a line there was no stepping back from. They thought they could erase me. Now they were preparing to destroy me. And the question wasn't whether I could stop them. The question was how far I was willing to go. By morning, the threat had a letterhead. A courier slid a thick envelope under my apartment door at 7:12 a.m. Outside counsel for Stratus Global. The language was surgical. Cease and desist. Temporary restraining order sought. Irreparable harm. Return all devices. No contact with investors. They accused me of commandeering company assets and clouding title to PulseTrack. I read it twice, set it down, and made coffee. Hook. Because this is where most people panic. I didn't. At 8:03, I called Maya Singh, my attorney. We'd worked together during the Horizon deal. She knew every comma that kept PulseTrack alive. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me you still have the signed IP schedule," she said. "In triplicate," I replied. "And the amendment." "Good," Maya breathed. "Stratus can scream, but paper wins. Come in at 10. Bring everything." By the time I hailed a cab, my phone was a siren. Rachel, 2 partners from Horizon, one block number that rang 5 times, then stopped. I listened to Rachel's voicemail in the back seat. Peter's calling it theft. He's rallying the board. He says you're trying to sell PulseTrack to a competitor. People are scared, Laura. Rumor is a blunt instrument. Contracts are a scalpel. Maya spread the documents across her conference table like a forensic map. The Horizon Investment Agreement, the PulseTrack IP assignment into ArcLight Holdings, LLC, my SPV, Stratus's exclusive license back, conditioned on performance covenants, and the protective clause everyone had ignored. Control rights reverting to the inventor if governance changed in bad faith or if my credentials were revoked without cause. Maya tapped the clause with her pen. This isn't exotic. It's a key person protection wrapped in IP. They'll call it self-dealing. It isn't. Horizon signed. The board ratified. We've got minutes. They'll say it was buried, I said. They had counsel, she answered. And you gave notice when Peter started cutting access. We have that email, right? I slid a printout across the table. A time-stamped message to Whitaker and the board secretary 6 weeks earlier. For avoidance of doubt, PulseTrack rights remain with ArcLight. Stratus's license is unaffected so long as conditions are met. No reply, but red receipts lit like a Christmas tree. Maya leaned back. Okay, we filed 2 things today. A declaratory judgment action confirming your ownership and license terms, and a TRO preventing Stratus from defaming you or interfering with ArcLight's rights. We also send litigation hold letters so they can't lose Slack messages. Rachel said he's poisoning the water, I added. Employees think I'll pull the plug. Then don't talk, Maya said. Let Horizon talk. Investors hate drama. They worship certainty. Give them a plan that keeps clients safe. Hook, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about stewardship. At noon, Horizon opened the investor call. Cameras flickered, faces arranged into neutral. Marcus, the senior partner who had backed me when Stratus was circling the drain, didn't waste time. Peter, he said, your counsel's letter to Ms. Hart contradicts our signed agreements. We are convening an extraordinary board session tomorrow at 9. Until then, status quo. No operational disruptions. Laura, can you confirm service continuity? Yes, I said, steady. PulseTrack stays stable. No outages, no leverage tactics. We protect clients first. A few heads nodded. Peter's jaw twitched. When the call ended, my phone buzzed again. Rachel, whispering from a stairwell. Check your email, she said. I forwarded you exports. If they ask, I'll deny it came from me. Seconds later, a zip landed. Slack threads. Peter telling legal to find an angle to invalidate ArcLight. An exec suggesting they float a story that I'd shopped PulseTrack to a rival. A screenshot of a draft press note. Former employee admits conflicts. Company reassures clients. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Not fear, anger. I sent the package to Maya. Her reply was instant. This is gold. Preservation notice goes out now. If they publish that note, it's defamation per se. By late afternoon, the first blog post hit. Power struggle at Stratus. Who owns the code? It wasn't hostile, more curious than accusatory, but the comments were gasoline. Anonymous insiders, wild theories, recycled grudges. I closed the tab. I've learned not to read rooms where no one uses their real name. At 5:11, my brother called. Sis, want me to come by? You shouldn't be alone. I looked around my apartment. Clean lines, quiet, the hum of the fridge. Alone had kept me clear-headed this long. Still, I softened. I'm okay, but thanks. He paused. You always take care of everyone. Let someone take care of you, too. After we hung up, I stood by the window and watched the city fold into evening. I thought about everything I'd done to get here. Late flights, missed birthdays, The cost of choosing a thing that doesn't hug you back. I'd told myself the work would pay me in security. Now the work wanted me to pay again, with my name. Number at 6:02, Maya texted, "Judge assigned. Hearing on Stratus's TRO is set for 8:30 a.m. We'll counter minutes later, a calendar invite from Horizon hit my inbox. Extraordinary board session, agenda, governance, and CEO performance. Start time, 9 a.m. Same floor, same room. 2 clocks, 2 rooms, 2 different kinds of verdict. Hook, because sometimes the only way out is through both doors at once. I spent the night building a single, brutal slide deck. No adjectives, just receipts. Signatures. Minutes. Code commit logs with my name 1,000 times over. A release schedule showing every revenue jump tied to pulse track updates. And one last page. A short, plain sentence. I will not weaponize what feeds our clients, but I will defend what I built. At 11:43 p.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. Peter's voice, lower than usual, almost tired. "You don't have to do this, Laura. Take a payout. Walk away. I can make this go away." I stared at the wall, the weight of every year settling in my chest. I hit delete. Tomorrow at 8:30, a judge would hear his emergency plea. At 9 o'clock, the board would hear mine without me saying a word. The room that tried to end me was about to end him, or prove I'd overestimated my leverage. Either way, I wasn't blinking first. The courthouse clock struck 8:30 a.m. sharp when Maya and I walked into the hearing room. Peter sat across the aisle, flanked by 2 lawyers in tailored suits, papers stacked like shields. He didn't look at me, but his jaw twitched every few seconds. The judge entered, adjusted his glasses, and skimmed the filings. Stratus had painted me as a rogue employee holding the company hostage. Maya stood, calm and precise, and laid out the contracts. The Horizon deal, the protective clause, the board minutes. No drama, no theatrics, just the truth in black and white. The judge leaned back, tapped his pen, and spoke. The ownership rights appear unambiguous. Motion denied. Peter's head snapped up. His lawyers whispered furiously, but it was over. I didn't smile. Not here. Not yet. At 9 o'clock, I stepped into the boardroom. The same polished table, the same faces that had laughed when Peter declared me eliminated. Now, no one laughed. Horizon's partners sat at the far end, files open. The agenda glowed on the screen. Governance and CEO performance. Peter tried first. He spoke of vision, of unifying leadership, of mistakes in paperwork. His words dripped with desperation. When he finished, silence hung heavy. Then Marcus, Horizon's senior partner, cleared his throat. "Laura, would you like to clarify your position?" I slid a single page across the table. PulseTrack remains licensed exclusively to Stratus, provided conditions are met. But I will not tolerate sabotage, erasure, or defamation. I am prepared to withdraw the license if necessary. Gasps. Chairs shifted. The weight of that sentence was enough. Peter exploded. "You can't threaten us. She's bluffing. She wouldn't dare." Marcus looked at him with quiet disdain. "She doesn't need to bluff. We've reviewed everything. Laura holds the rights. You hid it. You lied. That ends today." The vote took less than 5 minutes. Effective immediately, Peter Mercer was removed as CEO. Security entered. The same scene as before. An arrogant man, now pale and sweating, marched out of the room he thought he owned. His glare hit me like a knife, but knives only matter if you let them cut. When the doors shut, Marcus turned to me. "Laura, Horizon supports you. We want you not just as PulseTrack's architect, but as Stratus's steward. The board agrees. Effective immediately, we'd like you to assume the role of interim CEO. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe." That night, I sat alone in my apartment, city lights glowing outside. My phone buzzed with congratulations, offers, interviews. but I ignored them. I poured a glass of wine and stared at the stack of documents on my desk. The same papers that saved me. They had tried to erase me, to humiliate me, to cast me aside like a line item in a budget. Instead, they taught me the most important lesson of all. Power isn't given. It's taken, protected, and defended. I didn't just survive their betrayal. I rewrote the ending. And this time, the ending was mine.